Hi, this is Lucy, your clarity coach, and this is Tuesday Talks at 3. Welcome to the Intentional Parenting series. It's so lovely to have you here as we come to a powerful close of this series. This series is where we explore what truly matters in that journey of parenting, the things that need to be intentional, that we assume, that we take on, that everybody understands. It's parenting, isn't it? It did not come with a manual. So this intentional parenting suggests that now you're coming from a place where you know what you did not know, because it is okay not to know. But once you begin to understand and you apply intentionality, then that is where the magic happens. Thank you so much, Nancy, for joining. It's been a minute. I haven't seen you for a while. Karibu sana. We have had 5 episodes that have actually fed into the Intentional Parenting series. And it has been an exciting journey. The first one was on decisions, being clear on your core values, checking in and aligning with your daily actions, and then staying focused on them. Being intentional, that was very key. So when decisions are being made, you know that they're coming from your core values, that you're honoring your core values. So most of the time we just live life in autopilot. Whatever happens today, we take it as it comes. But life is so much better when we're intentional, when we know what we want to apply and what outcome we need, and the journey then becomes exciting because you know where you are and where you want to go, and then you appreciate this journey more. You appreciate the growth, the steps that you see your children making from the time of birth right through to being a toddler, a little child, a teenager, and now an adult. I should know. I have walked that journey. The next one was traditions. Now, traditions took a different turn where we tied it into the theme of the month, which celebrates the World Mental Health Day. And I had a special guest who came in and spoke about that specific focus that we had this year, which was mental wellness at work. And so in that session, I was seeking to understand, how then do I show up at a place of work from a point of healthy mental space? It just suggests then I need to come from a home, from a background, from a family, from an environment where I feel that there is some space of peace, some space to exist, some space where I belong. In fact, that was the most important, that I belong, and how I am seen in that space. What part do I play? What is my responsibility? So that was traditions. In traditions also, it got a bit controversial, how certain traditions work against our mental wellness, and we spread those out. So if you missed that episode, you want to get onto my YouTube channel, LMC Consultancy, which is now voiced by Lucy because I did a thing, but more of that later. So just get onto Voiced by Lucy, which is on LMC Consultancy on YouTube, and see what you can pick from that edition. That was the second one. The third one was about navigations. I mean, we all know we have a GPS in our lives that shows us from everywhere we're going. You pick an Uber today, you're able to put on your GPS. You're in your car, you're able to put on Siri or your GPS. And it gives you almost 100% direction of how you're going to get to this place. It gives you the time, gives you the distance, and therefore you can sit back because you've got the navigation down pat and enjoy the ride. And this is where the navigation in intentional parenting comes from. We want to get to a point where we are enjoying the journey of parenting, as opposed to always looking over our shoulder. Have we arrived? Are we doing it right? Who's watching us? Who's saying this? What is the consequence? Here we're able to align our goals as parents. We're able to take small, incremental, intentional steps. We're able to exercise flexibility and be ready to adapt. Because when we adapt, that means we are moving with the way we want to go. That's the navigation. But at times, Siri dies. At times, that GPS takes us further down the gate that we were stopping at. These are the realities of life. So how do we pivot? How do we adapt? That is where navigation came in. We then had our last session the previous session, which was on priorities. Priorities are key because priorities shift with our seasons, depending what season you're in. And here you are having intentional parenting suggests that we needed to identify those priorities. What were they? Some of us do not identify our priorities. Anytime somebody wants some of our moments, our time, our attention, we just give it away. We give it away, yet in that instant, perhaps you were sitting with that child of yours and there was a teachable moment that you were experiencing, a connection that was happening. But the phone rings or the doorbell goes and suddenly you've left this child and this opportunity for you to bond and be an intentional parent who is present, and you've gone to be present for somebody else. This is the choice that we make. Yes, maybe being present for somebody else will ensure the livelihood of this child. But how about spending time with this child and saying that I will be with you in another 10 minutes and then mommy needs to leave to go and do X, Y, Z. The language we use, the narrative that we use says that we love this child, makes this child feel that they are seen, they are heard. And that's all they need. They need to know that, yes, mommy is going to do something. And they're even giving you the permission to do that in their little way. But that's because you showed love. You showed love, you exhibited love in seeing them and recognizing that they needed you. So there was that idea of identifying what your priorities are. It was a great way to segue into juggling. So there's certain balls you have in there. Some people say spinning plates. I like to use the example of balls because some of these balls are rubber balls. Some of these balls are glass balls. So a rubber ball will bounce back up. A glass ball will break. This is what your priorities are. Choose which priorities are glass balls and which ones are rubber balls. And this kind of learning is applicable for anybody, not just parents, but anybody who is alive and breathing today. What are those things that are so key in your life? Identify them. Know how you're going to juggle them. Know where it is you're going to make trade-offs. So I'm going to do this instead of this, or I'm taking on this and I'm letting go the other. Be able to speak to that decision. We talked about that in the first session of decision making in intentional parenting. And then evolve. Evolve as a parent to meet the changing needs of your children. And that brings us up to today's session, which is all about expectations. Now, expectations are a two-way street. It takes two to tango. Never believe that you're the only one who has expectations as a parent. The child, although they have not voiced it, also has expectations. And if you were to garner a guess as to what those expectations are, the expectations of a nice warm home, a lovely meal, going to school are things that we don't really talk about. They're there, they're given. But if a child was given the chance to express or to voice the expectations that they have, it could also have some added ones. We want to see mom and dad here all the time. We want to feel their presence. We want, when we are speaking to mom and dad, they're not on their phone and they're not getting distracted by what is happening. But mom and dad are there despite being busy. In fact, today, in today's world of traveling a lot, parents are in the air all the time, traveling from one destination to another, working globally. And what does that do? It introduces the aspect of this online digital world. So we are FaceTiming more. Our children are growing up seeing us on the screen, but we are present. We are present. We're not using that as an excuse. I'm working. Oh, I need to go away for this project. So you're going to see me in 6 months' time. Make use of this time. Be intentional, and that's what priorities is all about. Being able to evolve and meet the demands of your children. Know the dates that are important to your children. If it is their swimming day, if it is their sports day, if it's their day for a rehearsal, if it is their opening day, their close day. Some of us parents believe that when we bring money to the table and pay for fees, when we bring money to the table and pay for the roof over our heads, and the frivolities that we need, the necessities in our homes, we've done our bit. We've brought in a house manager, we've brought in a driver, we've done our bit, so we'll become parents on remote control. And here we are losing the opportunity to connect. And guess what? This situation is not permanent. Tomorrow, you will reach that season in your life when you will come home to roost after those many years. And there will be an expectation that you would want your children to come and sit next to you and share this space. Sadly, that's not going to happen. The child had an expectation of you as they were growing up, and you did not meet that expectation. It's a two-way street. So today's question is going to be a question that's going to help you to see exactly where you are. Take an audit of where you are. Find out from your children, what is your expectation of me as your parent? Ask the question. And you will be surprised at how simple. Right, so we're back again. My apologies. My internet keeps on doing this to me, but the message is the same. It's not going to be thwarted. Please stay with me. Today's question is, how can parents set realistic expectations that reflect their children's development needs? So let us unpack this two-way street that I'm talking about when it comes to matters raising older children, adult children. The first one I would like us to do is understand that term. What is realistic? Therefore, when we are setting realistic expectations, we kind of have an inroad as to what that will look like. You see, setting realistic expectations for ourselves and our children means recognizing our limitations and the development stage of the child. So what can your limitations be? What builds up those limitations? Think about your upbringing. Think about your experiences before you became a parent, and now when you become a parent, the experiences that you go through and the limitations that come with those experiences. Because it is not always that we find ourselves in areas of success. We have our fair share of figuring out the cons in our lives where things are not working the way we expected them to work. And this is what makes us human. There's no perfection, and we're going to get onto perfectionism in a minute. So now to set realistic goals is looking at us recognizing our limitations and recognizing the development stage of that child. So everything has got to be age appropriate, from the language you use to the examples that you use to the feedback that you give and how you give it. I learned a long time ago to come from the point of recognizing the effort that my child had made or my children had made. I've got 2 adult children. Recognizing that effort. And that gave me carte blanche that when disciplinary actions were needed, I was able to walk into that disciplinary action and have a conversation. That became very natural for me, but because I started from the place of recognizing effort. And recognizing effort meant I laid down the expectations. And I said, this is how I would like things to go, and this is the reason why. And they began to understand it. Of course, by the time they were getting older, 9, 10, 11, into their teenage years, they began to question these expectations. And that was an opportunity for me to have a dialogue, conversation with them, to begin to understand what their perceived expectations were. So how can parents set these realistic expectations for their children so that it can reflect the development? Because that's the question. Educate yourself on appropriate, age-appropriate milestones. We can do that now. We've got the internet, we've got ChatGPT. Just type in that prompt, type in that search, and see what comes out. See what you can recognize happening at home with your children and respond to that. So set expectations that challenge your child without overwhelming them. You don't want them to be complacent either. You want them to stretch their capabilities so they can test what these expectations are. Now, that, as I have said, suggests that there's expectations on both ends. So just understanding what realistic expectations are, laying down the expectations, age appropriately, figure it out with your children, and let me tell you, you will enjoy the ride. Now with my adult children, the conversations are different, totally different. I find myself being educated, being on that side of learning and being educated more than when they were younger, when I was the one and all. I was the first and the last. I was the Alpha and the Omega. Everything that I said, they just took in and they believed lock, stock, and barrel. But that was because it was age appropriate. I needed to be that person at that time. And now things have changed. Did I become perfect? No. It was the journey. Remember the journey we talked about? And being called out by your children. I remember a distinct experience with one of my children where an exact feedback was given to me according to the way that I had sold it to them over the years. They had used a scenario on me and I had nothing else to say, like we say here in the Kenyanese, 10-0. They had given me the same pill that I had given them to swallow. And I said 10-0. I said, there, you've got me. And you allow it to happen because this is a great and fertile ground to have conversations. So avoiding perfectionism and being able to recognize progress is a way that I chose to go. Yet at that time, perfectionism is a thing that motivated me, inspired me to be my best, or so I thought. I have since interchanged that word with excellence and therefore effort. Can you imagine when we are able to recognize that we are meeting impossible standards, we are challenged ourselves, and we find that this becomes an area for us to grow as parents. We find that we are able to find an area where we can have gaps that can be filled. We find that we can have areas where we realize where our weak points are, and it's okay. We are human. We are not perfect. So embracing progress over perfection and allowing room for mistakes and learning is a beautiful place to be. Now remember, I said it's a two-way street. Do not only expect it of your children, but you should also demonstrate the same thing. You should show up when you have made a mistake and call it and say it. I mean, there's some mistakes that I have made as an adult that today I share with my children. It gets to that point now, it becomes a discussion of, guys, pay attention to the mistakes I made. Use that as a step up for you so that you protect yourself from having to do the same mistakes as me. Fantastic. Because in this way, they live their own lives, but they've got it here, right here. Hey, mom was in this situation and this is how it panned out for her. So they go in already thinking through all the things that could go wrong and all the things that could go right, and they prepare themselves for that experience. And that would not happen if I had not shared what I perceived as failures in my life and mistakes. So again, the question then would beg, how can parents avoid that trap of perfectionism in their parenting? Well, shift your focus. It's as simple as that. Just shift it, because whatever you concentrate on, wherever you concentrate on, that is where your energy flows. So if you're looking for the mistakes, you will find them. If you're looking for the silver lining, you will find it. It's that narrative and story that you tell yourself when you're alone. So in that story, start shifting your focus from perfectionism to growth. I did this a lot with my children. When they were in the school term and exams were nigh, I would say to them, guys, last year or last semester or last paper, this is how much you scored. We're going for 1 additional percentage point or 2 minimum. And the effort is what I recognized. That is how I found conversations with my children, building trust with my children, and being able to give them that space of communicating. And we're getting to communication in a moment. Communicating with them from an open space allowed them to bring almost, and I say almost, because they still had that setback of not being able to tell me everything. And of course, I'm the parent and they're the child. But by having these conversations, it got to a point where they brought almost everything to my attention of what was happening in their lives. Perhaps now they turned the tables on me, where we were looking at age appropriate. They were looking at adult appropriate. Does mom need to know all this? If we just tell her at least 5 of the 10 things that happened, we have communicated, and we're jumping onto that shortly. But these are life skills that your children need when they become adults. How then are they going to apply? Because children learn by watching. It doesn't matter what age they are. Think about if you're an adult on this session and you're driving and suddenly you jump lights and you're driving and a police person stops you and you bribe them and you're driving and you curse at somebody who passes by you. These children are watching and learning. And tomorrow, when they take that driver's wheel, they will jump the lights. They will bribe the police. They will curse at other drivers because they learned from the best, who is their role model. So you want to be careful when it comes to the effort that you make when it comes to progress. If indeed this did happen, call it out and say, guys, today I made some atrocious mistake and this is what I did. And I really need to come back from it. I don't know how to. Can anybody help me? Have a conversation about the mistake that you made, because you are human. You most probably had so many things competing in your head, and when you got to those lights, well, I'm trying to extend grace, yeah? You got to the lights and the lights were turning red and you just jumped them because you were absent-minded. Whatever it is, upon realization of what you have done wrong, make it a teachable moment. We have certain homes that have jars, that have curse jars. So anytime you say a word that's not allowed, you put money in there. But that also is a good thing, but it can also be a negative thing, because perhaps we are allowing these words to be said without consequences other than putting money. It could be a message that says, as long as you have money, you can get out of anything. Why don't you go beyond the putting money in the jar? Yes, put it, so that we are taming this perfectionism of wanting to say the right words all the time. But then go beyond that. And instead of flying blind, be able to say that the reason I did this was because of 1, 2, 3. And these are the steps that I'm taking from today onwards to tame these words that I'm saying. So how have you shown your vulnerability with your children? Is a question that you want to ask yourself when it comes to taming perfectionism. And what has been the outcome for both you and your children? How did that conversation go? Surprise yourself. Well, the question today is loud and clear. How can parents set realistic expectations? And we are going through that. We've already looked at understanding what realistic expectation would be. It's different for every family. We've now looked at taming perfectionism, and we're going to crown it off with the power of communication. Clear communication helps children understand what's expected of them and why. The why is key. It is so important that you explain the why, because tomorrow you'll hear them in the playground explaining to another child the why. And as long as they get used to knowing the beautiful thing about clear communication, the expectations of it and the why, they take it into their adult life. And anytime that they are called upon to do something, they start by understanding the why. Anytime that they have a purpose in life or a project, they start by understanding the why. It's the power of communication that you start off in your home. So it fosters a sense of security and responsibility. You know, I'm just going to look at your future self if you're a parent listening to this today. You will not stay forever young. You are going to go into the seniority of life. And at that point, it will be your children taking care of you. And this is what we wish for, that we will still have our children around us. So whether they're there in person, taking care of you, or they put you in an old people's home and they visit you, they're there. And there are certain expectations. So you will become like a child at that time. And you're going to appreciate the power of communication, being able to be told what's expected and why. So for instance, Mom, you need to take this medicine. You need to take it 3 times a day and explain the why. Mom, you need to eat. Imagine the tables are going to turn around. Because in today's world, we live longer. So prepare yourself, prepare your children as adults, when they become adults, to be able to extend this kind of power of communication. You know, when we say how can parents effectively communicate their expectations to their children, it's not just a simple, this is what I want you to do. We are saying to be clear, to be consistent, to be age appropriate, to ensure that your children understand the expectations and the reasons behind them. That's what we are saying. So role modeling effective communication is key on your part. Start today. It's a good day to start. Adult children have an identity of their own, and communicating this can be encouraged. Guys, speak up. Let us speak to one another. Let us understand one another. Great to see you, Andrew. We're talking about the power of communication and intentional parenting. So be intentional at every stage of your child's life, and you will create a family environment that encourages and honors respect. Well, those were the 3 areas. Parents find themselves living vicariously through their children. This happens to every parent, even if they deny. We are always living vicariously through our children to a certain extent. The things that we wish we could have done, we didn't do. We then want to live through our children, forgetting that our children have an identity of their own. And like I said in the beginning, this has a fair share of its pros and cons. Hence today's question: how can parents set realistic expectations and reflect their children's development needs? And we sought to unpack this 2-way street, and we can agree now that understanding development needs, avoiding perfectionism, and communicating clearly can help us parents create a supportive and balanced environment that promotes individual growth and learning for our children. And as we come to the end, I leave you with my 3 takeaways always. I leave you with 3 takeaways that you can plug and play. So tips on managing realistic expectations: plug and play 1. Move with age appropriate milestones. So how old is your child today? You may have twins, but they develop at different stages. So age appropriate does not only mean the years, it also means the understanding of this child. So move with age appropriate milestones. They did something today, celebrate it. They are going to remember how it made them feel, and they're going to replicate it as much as they can. Makes your life easier. Plug and play 2. Exchange perfectionism with progress. Look for the progress. Don't look for the perfectionism. See what has happened differently that is positive. Yes, address the negative, but lead with the positive. Intentional parenting. Plug and play 3. Strive for clarity in communication. For clarity, so that we can create that family environment that you so desire. And I'm not threatening you at all. But like I said, there is a time when you will be much older and the tables will have turned round. So prepare these gathering years now, that when that time happens, they will come back and give back to you even 1,000 times more than you gave them, because you were present, you were understanding, you saw them, you heard them. All these things. It is not a threat, it is a reality. It is allowing you, if you haven't to this moment, today is a good day for intentional parenting. Today was all about expectations. This episode is going to be up on my LMC Consultancy YouTube channel, voiced by Lucy. And when you get there, guys, hit the subscription, hit the notification button for more information from me. I've got my short side there where I'm giving you little snippets on personal development and self-improvement. And if you're there, leave me a message. Tell me what else you'd like to hear. In the meantime, my social media continues to educate you. It continues to inspire you. Now, the next episode of my podcast, Skillful She, is about to drop. We're going into aligning core values with Coach Catherine, who is a renowned mom coach. You want to be able to look out for it. The date is 31st of October is when it is going to drop. And the conversations there are so laughable at because of the things that we do as parents. We're just going to bring it right to you and give you some ideas of how to be able to work them to your advantage. So we're on the last day of our core values. Remember last week I said to you that I was going to run core values on 28th and 29th, and we did day 1 yesterday. Today is day 2, again aligning values. Do you know what your values are? Are you subscribing to your values? How are these values affecting your decision-making skills? Being able to answer these questions is very key. And yesterday was amazing with the people there saying, whoa, you mean I was operating under somebody else's values? Values that are coming from the society that I have grown up with, my parents, the environment, the school. And never did I once think about identifying my own values that speak to me. It's been amazing. Today we're going to go into behavioral aspects. The execution of these values. What does it look like when we have behavior that is value driven? So we're talking about ethics today in decision making, and you can still join us. So if you drop vibes right here, I will give you the link to this evening. It's going to cost you only 500 shillings, and you can join us for a powerful 90 minutes of knowing how your values can be demonstrated in behavior when it comes to decision making. Let us help build one another. And until then, be kind to yourselves. Bye-bye now.